Hello folks, this is Pastor Mike Hoggard coming to you from the Hall of the Justice League with another Watchman video broadcast dealing with the whole comic book issue. A little play on words there. We left off last week getting into this idea, let's see here, from Genesis chapter 6. The Bible was kind of telling us what to look for. In Genesis chapter 6, we have the story, I believe the Word of God. In verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, so before the flood and after the flood, when the sons of God, and you just kind of think about how comic books would draw this out. The sons of God, these aliens or these extraterrestrial beings or the gods coming down to the earth. The sons of God came into the daughters of men. That's Superman and Lois Lane having a baby. That's what that is. Or Starman, and I can't remember who it was, this woman having a baby. The movie with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan. Anytime you have Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan together, it's a hit. Nicolas Cage in the City of Angels. He's a god. He's a watcher. If you just get the imagery, if you've ever seen this movie, you get the imagery of them just standing around watching everybody. Going to the library, reading books and stuff. But anyway, he falls in love with Meg Ryan, and anyway. And when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And so we've been dealing with all the gods and the goddesses that have existed, or mythology has said existed, over the past 6,000 years. And what the Bible's telling you is that there's an air of truth here because of what happened when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. Gods like Mercury, he's the Flash. Isis, we talked about her, Wonder Woman. All of these different mighty, powerful, Thor, these powerful gods who are the sons of the gods and so on, who have all these magnificent powers. And we left off last week dealing with this issue, something that we have dealt with many times before, but now it takes on a different aspect. Now when we see it in comic books, we kind of get this whole idea of what exactly is going on. We started talking about the dying God issue, or the God who gives his life for others, dies, and then he's resurrected again. Let me show you what that looks like in the Bible. So I'll show you the truth of it, and then you'll see how it's portrayed in these comic books and in these movies and TV shows and everything like that. In Revelation chapter 13, and here's something that I've caught on to in studying the Bible, is that you have Christ, you have Antichrist. You have Christ, who is the Son of God, through a virgin woman, and you have the Antichrist, who is the son of Satan, through a harlot woman. I mean, you just see the opposites here. So we have the beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. In verse 2 of Revelation 13, the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. His mouth was the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw gave him his power. He's got powers. He can do stuff. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So all throughout mythology, you have the story of this dying God who gives his life, and then he awaits resurrection, or he has already been resurrected. And so let's look at the real Jesus, who gave his life for the sins of mankind, gave himself for a ransom, and his blood atones us, whereby we were sinners, and now Christ died for us. That means in our place, and he took all of that on himself so that you and I can be free and we can live forever in heaven. The Antichrist is another Jesus. He has sort of this same idea. There was a documentary, I've only watched part of it, called Zeitgeist, and it tried to show that the spirit that is working today is the spirit that's always been, and it tried to show that basically Jesus was just another one of these myths that people invented to have power over people. That's not true. There was a Jesus. He was the Son of God. He died for the sins of mankind and rose again on the third day. And you have to understand, the devil is the great imitator. He imitates what he knows what God's plan is. He imitates that to try to draw people away from the real Christ, to his false Messiah. So in mythology, you had all these gods that died in offering their life for some benefit to mankind or the people around them. And then they were buried, or they were forgotten, or whatever, and then they were resurrected. One of them was Mithras. We dealt with this in the video called Jesus Christ, Another Jesus, Another Spirit, Another Gospel. Forgive me, it's early this morning. Another Jesus, because Mithras was this dying god who awaits resurrection. Here's a graphic of Mithras, and if you look over here, he's got the body of a human, he's got the head of a lion. Mithras would have made an awesome superhero in a comic book. I mean, I don't know why somebody hasn't jumped on this. Well, maybe they have. But anyway, notice he's got wings, he's got the body of a man, and look at the muscles he's got on him. And look over here, he's performing some sort of miraculous feat. It looks like he's got some kind of animal by the horns, and he's going to kill them and all this stuff. And so this idea of Mithras being this dying god, he was worshipped. Those who followed the cult of Mithras were initiated a certain way. Manly Hall in the Secret Teachings of All Ages said this: candidates who successfully passed the Mithraic initiations were called lions and were marked upon their foreheads with the Egyptian cross. Stop right here. This same beast that rose up out of the sea, it says here in verse 17 of the same chapter, that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So everyone in verse 16 had to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. And those who were initiated into the cult of Mithras eventually received a mark on their foreheads. Now, I'm going somewhere with all this. The reason why I'm teaching this, number one, because this comic book superhero thing is big, and it's captured the minds and the attention of people. Is it just for our cheap thrills and entertainment, and for us to fantasize about, oh, I wish I was Superman, and you get this image of some fat guy in a Superman suit pretending he's something he's not? Or does it have a diabolical end? And I believe that the false prophet, and we talked about that early on, the false prophet, his job is to lead everybody into worship of the son of Satan, the beast, and eventually receive a mark in the right hand or forehead. So this was the initiation of the cult of Mithras, the superhero, half god, half human, who gives his life. And in the Mithraic initiations, Freemasonry borrowed from the Mithraic initiations, where you have the death of Hiram Abiff. Hiram is the one who has the secret. He has the secret powers of building a temple. And he's killed, but he's resurrected with the grip of the lion paw. That's what the lion here represents. It's not the Lion of the tribe of Judah. There are two lions in the Bible. There's Christ, the Lion of Judah, but there's also the devil, our adversary, as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And so we have Hiram Abiff resurrected back to life again through the grip of the lion paw. This is done in the Masonic ceremony. So you see it in Mithraism, you see it in Freemasonry. And I believe that we're seeing mankind go through these initiations on a very, very grand scale. And I think educating people about the cults, about mythology, about Mithras, about Apollo, Dionysus, all these gods, I think educating these people and getting them to think in the direction of the mystery cult is what's leading people to receive the mark in their right hand or in their forehead. He mentioned that they received the mark on their forehead and the sign of the Egyptian cross. Let me show you what that looks like. It looks like a cross, but it has an oval on top of it. It's called an ankh. Here's a picture of Isis. You remember her? Oh, mighty Isis. And in the comic book and the children's TV series, Isis has this sun disk with these bull horns coming out of her head. That's where her magic powers are. But Isis' job, she holds the Ankh in her hand. And the Ankh is a symbol, let me explain it. The Ankh is a symbol of, in Egyptian mythology, it's the symbol of resurrection. Remember, Osiris is dead. Mithras is dead. Superman is dead. Okay, we're going to go there. And Isis needs to bring him back to life because that's her husband. So she does so. She has the power in her hand with the Ankh symbol. And the Ankh simply represents the male and the female. You figure it out. That's what it represents. Sons of God and daughters of men and their offspring. That's what was. So when you look at this graphic here of almighty Isis wearing the bull horns and the sun on her head, and that is her husband Osiris, she is using the Ankh to resurrect him back to life. Interestingly enough, there's a comic book for that. It was called Dr. Fate, and that was his symbol of magic power. Dr. Fate, I never read Dr. Fate. I think that was Marvel. I may be wrong. I'm getting a lot of email from people saying, hey, Marvel all the way. Okay, I get it. But anyway, Dr. Fate here has these magic powers, and his powers come from the Ankh. Now, the guys who wrote these comic books, they just didn't pull this out of a hat. They knew what they were talking about, and I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the comic book authors a little bit later on. These guys did their homework. They knew exactly what they were talking about. They knew exactly what they're doing. It's similar to me. I study the Bible. I want to be able to teach people the Word of God. I want to be able to teach it plainly. Paul said we use plainness of speech. In teaching, we're not trying to teach some mystery, secret doctrine that nobody can know about it. We're going to teach you plainly the doctrines of Jesus Christ. Well, these guys, they draw out the doctrine and the teaching of the Antichrist, but they do it in secret. But they do their homework. They know exactly what they're talking about. I had mentioned before that J.R.R. Tolkien, in drawing together his ideas for the fantasy world of Middle-earth and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and the Silmarillion and all these things that he wrote, he was a professor of mythology, specifically Norse mythology. So he knew what he was talking about. So if you've ever looked at and read the Lord of the Rings, and you know a little bit about mythology, you can see it in there. You can see some of the names that he used in his trilogy, in his books, in his writings, and things like that. One of them was the character Mithrandir. Mithrandir is Mithras. That's where Tolkien got the name and the concept, because you have this magician, you have this wizard. And let me back up a little bit, because the idea is that when Osiris is resurrected, he's more powerful now than he was before he died. That is a constant, consistent theme that we see all throughout the whole comic book thing, is that now that they've resurrected, now they've got really superpowers. So here is the Lord of the Rings, and Tolkien is teaching you about Mithras, but he calls him Mithrandir. And he's called Gandalf the Grey. The elves called him Mithrandir. And he's Gandalf the Grey. He can do this magic, but he gets into a battle with, I can't remember who it was, and he's cast into the underworld, and he dies, but he's brought back to life. And now Mithrandir, is Gandalf the White. Now he's more powerful than he ever has been. Shouldn't have killed me, buddy. And this is what happens with Osiris. We see it. Do you remember Star Wars? Oh, I do. Okay. So here we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. Notice the similarity.